Hi, everybody. This is Cassie on Crowd Chat with Cassie Elle. It is 7 o'clock, and today I have a very cool guest for my first revamp of the show where we're focusing more on bringing in the crowd. Gunter Eickert is joining me today from Academy Games. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Cassie. Excited to talk with you and answer everybody's questions.
Yeah, wait, let me go ahead and make sure I've got that up. Okay, so in case anybody does have any questions, we are ready to roll. So some cool stuff about Academy Games that I was taking a look. I looked at the Kickstarters that you've had. You've had 8 Kickstarters, I believe, so far. And your average backer count is almost 3,000 backers, which is quite a lot for, especially your first campaign alone had almost 650 backers. And that's a lot for a first time.
Which I believe was 1775, I think.
Yeah, that was like in 2013. So that was a lot of backers. How I figured we could start with that. I know it was a little while ago, and Kickstarter has changed since.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, since back. I know, right? Stretch goals are so big now. I know they weren't so necessary back then, and that's become a big thing. But what I wanted to do is start with talking about your first campaign and how you did your marketing, because you had so many backers, and how it's changed from that to the most recent one, which was your One Small Step game that you just, I think it's, I just hit my mic. It was a couple of weeks ago, I believe it ended, or maybe about a month or so ago. So.
Yeah, it ended at the Tuesday after Gen Con, which I think was like the 6th or something, 6th of August.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
So yeah, just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks.
You had a lot of backers. How many? I think I wrote that one down. Yeah, you had almost 1,600 backers for that one. So you've had quite a lot of support for all your campaigns. So I'm curious, how did you get your crowd for your first campaign, 1775?
Well, we had what our main benefit there was that we already had a few games out. Not many at that point. I believe maybe 1775 might have been our 4th game we came out with. So we, of course, had a good following from those games there. And 1775 specifically hit a nice niche market.
Okay.
We did not try to do what was popular on, for example, Kickstarter. Like if you're thinking, oh, I want to have a fantastic Kickstarter right now, I need a bunch of minis and I need that people get, and that's what does well in Kickstarter, or I need a really cool, simple card game that people like, because those are always what do the best. But that means also you have the most competition, because there are, for every super successful miniature-based Kickstarter, for example, there are a ton of ones that relatively fail, because, I mean, with miniature Kickstarters, it's really easy to lose money if you don't do so well. So so that was one of the first things that we knew we were doing, is that we wanted to do a game that really was not on Kickstarter yet. And that's why we did a historical war game. It's not usually the kind of game you think, hey, that'd do great on Kickstarter. No, but and I want to also say that's why we went into historical games to begin with, because we love all games. I love playing RPGs, collectible card games, Euro games are probably my all-time favorite, and I love playing war games too. But the war game market at the time we entered in 2008 was pretty wide open for a modern design and company style, and that's why we win it. So we focus on something that was not out there and hit that first, so that because there's lots of people that like history-based games, but there are a fraction of the number of history-based games as a number of sci-fi and fantasy.
You're not wrong there.
Yep, and even though those genres have bigger markets, like larger audience sizes, since we have less competition in that historical realm, that was able to, there was no competition on Kickstarter at the time for us to say, hey, if you like history, if you like the Revolutionary War, come check out this Kickstarter. And that was probably like my first. That's one route to go. It's not the only. Like I said, going after what's popular. If you have a great idea that can really add to what's already out there, that's a good idea. But that niche market strategy is the route we went for with 1775.
So did you do any like advertising on, like paid advertising on Board Game Geek, or did you?
We did not do paid advertising on Board Game Geek for that campaign. I believe we have for on future ones, but not at that time. And I don't even think Facebook advertising was as big as it is now when we did that. We did do some Facebook advertising for 1775, but it wasn't. We always at least break even on the money we spend, and then we kind of feel like it's a win if we spend $1,000 on Facebook advertising and we get $1,200 of backers from that $1,000 we spent. Well, yeah, that's I think a win in the end, because one, you're growing your crowd. These people getting this game in their hands makes it more likely that they'll support one of your future games.
That's true.
And that's the other thing that made 1775 successful, is that it wasn't our first game. You shouldn't expect your first game to do as well as your fifth game. I mean, you better hope it does not do as well as your fifth game, because if your fifth game's not doing as well as your first game, there's something wrong. But that's what branding is. You're building up a brand through continuous quality releases that lets you be continuous successful and have predictive planning.
So having I guess it's like brand trust. It was really what helped. It sounds like your first campaign, because you didn't do a lot of marketing, but you said you have done a lot of Well, I don't know if you've done a lot, but you have done some marketing since then.
Yeah, I'll say this. So we have done Board Game Geek marketing, which has been the web banners tend, like we said, we at least break even on those. And we've done like some like the BGG contests, which is I feel like a little bit more of a crapshoot, because it's so much more dependent on like what other contests are going on. And like I said, you're losing kind of your niche, that niche marketing strategy, if you're just doing what everybody else is doing with like the contests. And one, I think this is an important thing to talk about, is we also have tried some of the firms that offer to do marketing for you. And I want to offer cautionary tale. I'm not going to name names or anything about like what we've the experience, who we've had these experiences with, because it's not exactly sure if it was malicious or not. But you have to be careful, because and it all depends on the contract with how they get reimbursed. So how they often work is that you get they get a percentage of every sale that is referred from their marketing efforts. And that's what you should go for if you can, because you don't want to go for that they get a percentage of your campaign, because you don't know how much they're going to bring into your campaign. And because if you bring in 80% yourself and they bring in 20, and you have to pay them a percent on that 80% that you got in, that's not good for you. But the problem is with Kickstarter is what you see when it ends, no campaign gets all that money, because so many credit cards are declined.
Oh, okay.
And what we found is that we usually have a pretty good failure rate of only about less than 0.5%, like 0.5%.
That's good.
So it's usually between like 0.2 to 0.5% for us. But I've heard of it as being as high as 2. And for one campaign we did, it was 6%.
Wow.
Way higher than our previous two campaigns that were around 0.3%.
That is pretty high.
So we went, why was that so high? And so luckily, every time we did any sort of advertising, we had separate referral tags. So we could see exactly where every single pledge came from. And what we found is literally 90% of the failed credit cards came from this advertising agency.
Wow, that's crazy. I've not heard that before.
And if unless you are really look at all the numbers, and we actually had to get the actual data. Luckily, we know people at Kickstarter. They had to send us special data. They had looked into it themselves to find out what was going on, and that's how we found out specifically it came from them. So I don't know if they are doing it on purpose or who they're advertising to, if they offered like compensation for backing a Kickstarter or not. Whoever was actually backing was using a bunch of fake credit cards that would be declined. And with Kickstarter, you don't get the money until 2 weeks later. So you don't know that these are declined until 2 weeks after the campaign ends. And depending on when you need to pay them, and you might not even ever find out about these declined credit cards until after you pay them. And it was a big kind of back and forth as they said we owed them this much money. And we're like, oh, we'll pay you 20% of that because that's only how many of your pledges actually went through. So I just want to make sure we had a chance to talk about that. So we've used pretty much everything, but specifically about advertising agencies, you have to be very careful. And not that they're not worth using, but you have to watch the numbers.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard that before. And 6% is a really large number for a campaign. Did that bring it, like, that didn't affect it too painfully, did it? You know how, like, I don't know how close it was and what you needed for your...
Oh, no, it wouldn't affect the funding. But still, that's a hefty chunk of money. That's $6,000 for every $100,000 you bring in.
That's a lot.
And then, of course, you have all the Kickstarter fees, like for credit card processing, fees to Kickstarter. So you're already losing around like 3 to 4% right there. Which, again, most backers, when you back a Kickstarter, you don't know like how everything is broken up. But it's that extra 6% is a important cut of what you're expecting to get in. So, and that's a good interesting thing, but you should always expect some credit cards to fail. That's something you should always expect, but not 6%.
So you would say the marketing firms, they can work, but be careful to watch it, the numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be knowledgeable, and you have to make sure, and that's why I say I highly recommend referral tags. And you have to, and I don't use them anymore just because of it's that extra work I don't think is worth it, of worrying about that. But yeah, you have to know when you get your money in, you have to know that what they are said that you owe them, you actually do owe them. And that's also why if you're going to make a contract like this, always make it U.S. law.
Okay.
Because if you're working with a foreign provider, marketing provider, and their contract is based in their country, and they sue you because they say you owe them $2,000 more. Well, are you going to travel overseas to do that? To go and defend your claim? It makes it a lot more difficult. So, I mean, this is all business stuff,
but it matters.
The marketing it's important in terms of specifically marketing, how to market Kickstarter. You don't. People will promise you the moon when it comes to marketing Kickstarter. They'll say, "Hey, we've made Kickstarters $20 million in the last 5 years. We can help you we can increase your income by 33%. Well, are they actually going to increase your income by 33%? Probably not. Like you have to already be a pretty successful Kickstarter, because hype, it escalates off each other. If they're doing that well in their marketing, it's because your campaign's already doing that well.
I've heard that where if what is it? I know there's a saying, I can't think of it, but like where when you're successful, that's when all of the people that want to be partaking in your success start to come out, is when you're starting to become successful.
Yeah.
Well, did you use a marketing firm for your most recent campaign?
No, we did not. I mean, and our most recent campaign is it did exactly kind of what we expected. We expected anywhere between 100,000 and 150,000. So somewhere in that ballpark. And that's because we can predict how much a campaign is going to make just because we've been doing this so long. And that mostly comes from a little bit of intuition and experience, the same amount as a bigger, more expensive game that doesn't need as many backers. And that's why, like, we always offer other items in addition for, especially like a game for $60. We always like to separate the game mechanics upgrades from the deluxeification upgrades. And we always make like the game mechanics stuff, the things that add gameplay free. And then not everybody wants to pay for pretty wooden or 3D miniature pieces. So often we make those a add-on item so that we're able to make the base pledge lower, but that add-on item, again, that we know a certain, on average, a range of what percentage people will add on an add-on item. So
with the add-on, I've heard from some publishers that they prefer the add-on to be in the late pledge, so then the Kickstarter doesn't get some of the funds from add-ons. Same thing with shipping. They put the shipping in after the fact. Would you say doing it in like a pledge manager is better?
I personally am not really concerned about the cut Kickstarter gets, because in my opinion already, Kickstarter is the cheapest advertise. That's why we do Kickstarters, not because we couldn't produce this game without the Kickstarter funds. The Kickstarter does two things. It's the cheapest advertising out there, and two, it's risk mitigation. That we can actually we have an idea of how many of this game to print before we print it. And so that's one thing. We determine how big the print size is going to be based off how good the Kickstarter does. And so in my view, I like to give people multiple opportunities to add on these items. So basically, it's kind of the idea of, you see a commercial. If you see that once, you're probably not going to buy this brand cereal. But after seeing that commercial for 100 times, and you're walking in a grocery store, you're like, I've heard about that on the TV because that commercial's on 100 times. I'm going to try that out just because I'm curious. And giving people I like giving people the opportunity to get during the Kickstarter, and then if they had not decided to get it, they have the opportunity to also get during the crowdfunding or the survey. And so I think you end up making more that way because of that multiple opportunity. It's the same thing actually at shows. Before board games, we were into scissors, and we found that if instead of having one big booth, we would have two smaller booths in separate locations, and we would sell more. And it's because people would have it's multiple opportunities to once see your product, but also they'd see it more than once walking through the exhibit hall. And there's just a certain psychology in how often you see something to when you decide to do something.
Right.
And same thing with like a stream like this. You don't just stream at one place. You stream at multiple places because it gives more opportunity to somebody to actually see the stream and watch it. They might see on Facebook but decide not to watch it at that time. But then they also see it on YouTube as a related video, something that's watched. It's like, oh, I also saw that on Facebook. They're more likely to click on it the more they see it repeated.
Right. That makes sense.
And so that's why I am not concerned about the small percent Kickstarter gets. But we don't do shipping during the campaign anymore just because of right now the uncertainty of shipping costs. Shipping costs can fluctuate so quickly and much, and especially if you have a game, like One Small Step is not a problem because we have a very quick turnaround on this game. But on a larger project that we know is not going to be out for a year, it's hard to predict what the shipping rates will be a year from the Kickstarter. So we like to do that in the survey because it gives us a little bit more time to make a accurate assessment prediction of what the shipping will be.
Yeah, and I've heard, I hear it both ways where they put it in the Kickstarter so that way backers don't have to be concerned about it later on, and then what you do, putting it in later on. So I guess it really just depends on what's best for, like you said, your turnaround. If you can turn it around quick enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. And one thing I want to add about add-ons, I want to add this on to add-ons, is that we usually do not make our add-ons available at the start of the campaign.
And so what's the reason?
And so it's because of, and the thing is, this has changed over the years, so you always have to be modernizing with the times, but your rate of money income is one of the things that determines how high on the list of hotness lists you appear. So on the first page of the Magic list of board games on Kickstarter, one of the things is how much money, how many new backers are you getting, and how much money are you getting at what rate. The other big one is comments. How many comments are you getting? So the Kickstarters that get the most comments will usually, right now, have like the highest priority. When we first started back in 2014, we found the rate of money you're getting was the biggest factor. So what we do, and this really saved our Agents of Mayhem campaign. We know in the middle of the campaign you have a lull. And that's when you drop off the Magic or hotness list. You get a ton fewer backers because you're not up there. If you can stay up there the whole campaign, that is what does your campaign the best. So what we do is when we hit a wall, we add a add-on to the campaign. All the people who have already backed the game add the add-on. It shoots our money, keeps on rising instead of flatlining, which keeps us higher on the list. Like I said, this does not have as much of a role we found as previously. Now it's comments. So one of the things we like to do is give people ways to interact in the comment list or comments. So for example, having them people vote on options, giving their opinions on stuff. That will shoot you up on the rankings. And those are, but that's why we hold off our add-ons and we release them in segments.
That's
and so
brilliant.
With Agents of Mayhem, we actually lost 1,000 backers in that campaign. Middle of the campaign, 1,000 backers. And it was a long story, but basically it was an IP license, and there was some, like the company we licensed from sold.
That's
and
crazy.
There was a random person saying that we lost the license, which was not true.
Wow.
And we actually had to send a cease and desist to this person to keep him from spreading. I have no idea why he was saying this. I don't know if he was a past employee or something he had against that IP holder. But and there's some other things like I won't go into, but we lost 1,000 backers, which is a huge amount.
That's a whole campaign.
And when you lose 1,000, and when you lose 1,000 backers, you expect the money to start plunging. When people start seeing stretch goals, like the money amount going below stretch goals that have already been unlocked, people then start exiting because they don't think the campaign is going to be successful, because Kickstarter is mainly for collectors. They want to have the whole collection. If they don't think they're going to be able to get a lot of stuff from a Kickstarter, a lot of cool collectible stuff, they're like, okay, I'm not going to waste my money on this. So when this started happening, we released one add-on after another that we had planned these add-ons, but we released them in quicker succession than we planned. We never dropped lower than $5,000 as we lost these 1,000 backers. So we prevented our campaign from going to a free fall and staying successful in the end, because we planned for these contingencies, because you're always going to have people leave the campaign. We didn't expect 1,000. We haven't had 1,000 since forever, but it was a huge number, and that is why we don't, either because you never want that law, or heaven forbid that you have a huge downturn, those kind of things. But it's also doubling down. I mean, we had planned off these add-ons from the beginning, but using add-ons, that's more things you have to produce. That's more risk. So if you are a first-time publisher, that's definitely something you want to do. It's better because your odds are you are risking your own personal wealth and livelihood to run your first campaign. So you can't, like, we have an established company, we have a income, we have a budget, and we already had budget for these add-ons. That's why we're able to release these, and we knew the Kickstarter was going to be successful in the end. But if you're a new first time, you don't want to do that, because it's better that your campaign fails, you reassess, you rework things, relaunch, than put more risk on yourself, because it could not work, especially if you're a first time Kickstarter. It's you with the first time Kickstarter, you want to be as low risk, and you definitely have to. You have to be realistic about what I always expect to get the minimum amount that's feasible. Like, that's what I expect to get. I don't expect to ever have $1 million Kickstarter, because that's how you stay in business. I expect, this Kickstarter is going to make $100,000. That's what I'm on a budget for. If it makes $200,000, fantastic. If it makes $500,000, even better. But I never plan on making that $200,000. Like that, I need that for the project to be successful. So
that's really interesting. I've never heard of anyone using add-ons as a way to do the spike. I think that's a really interesting. I'm like taking down mental notes for future campaigns I run myself. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, right now it's all about comments. So we haven't really done this to the full extent that we should. Mainly because it takes a lot more time and manpower. But interactive things where you get people comment because people love to give you their opinions. And 2, it lets you get their opinions so that you're actually delivering something that'll be more successful. So it's good also market research. And then also you're increasing your metrics by getting them to comment and interact. So and it makes them feel more personally invested in the project. So when somebody is voting and they feel like they have stake in it now, they're less likely then to back out.
That's true.
Of course, you have always they're really set on the thing they voted on not going through. That's also...
It doesn't happen that often. I mean, you're going to get a couple of those every campaign, but...
And that's why I always make it clear that this will be up for a vote again, or at least that's what we'll be doing in future campaigns. So it's more about priority. What do you want to make sure gets unlocked first? This character, or this piece of art, or which do you like better? And this one will be possible to unlock still, but this one will be first.
Okay, I like that.
And it's no extra money off our back, because we plan on doing both. I mean, assuming we're going to reach that amount, but giving people involvement and choice again gets them more invested in the project.
Okay. Well, we're running out of time. I don't want to take. No, it's okay. I don't want to take a whole hour from you. But
no, you're fine.
No, well, this is all really. Your story is really interesting, and I've actually, like I said, I'm taking mental notes because I plan on running some Kickstarters in the future, and so I'm. Yep. One of the reasons I am excited about having the show is that I get to take notes too, and I don't have to rewatch it because I was the one running it. So, But before I let you go, there were a few questions that some people had. We did cover a bunch of them about the marketing and stuff like that. But someone wanted to know, when you first started Academy Games, way back when, was it a part-time job or did you quit and this was your full-time gig?
Well, so we started Academy Games. My father and I started together when I was still in college, and he was just looking to retire. It was a hobby for him. And it was a hobby for both of us. While I was at school, we loved playing games, we liked designing, and so we never originally planned it. I mean, I was considered either going into in engineering, thinking about patent law, and I ended up getting my master's in engineering. But the whole time I was working with Academy Games from basically freshman year of college, and basically what happened is became a lot more successful than we had first expected.
Which is great.
It is, but also meant a lot more work. And I mean, fortunately, now I get to do something that I'm really passionate about. But no, it was starting out part-time, and I highly suggest that's how most first-time people trying to break in the industry do it. It's going to be a whole nother job. I mean, it's going to be an extra 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I'm assuming, like me, you want to get in the industry because you love it. But the thing to keep in mind, when you get into board game, especially design, you do not get to play games. You're pretty much stuck all the time play testing and playing prototypes. I'm about 3 years behind on the current games.
Yeah, I am too. I just had to put a buying freeze because I can't get them to the table. I'm also doing that same thing. I'm playing prototypes way more than I am anything else.
Yep.
Someone just asked what your next Kickstarter is, if you can talk about it.
Yeah, so we actually have 3 Kickstarters planned, or 2 Kickstarters planned in pretty close succession. Our next one we just finished, first of all, One Small Step, which is a worker placement Euro game about the space race. It's on Late Pledge right now, so you can go to Academy Games for that. We haven't really announced it because we're still working on the art and stuff, but is a Battle Royale Dexterity game. So it's a dexterity combat game, and very different than what we've done in the past, but it is just it's a hoot. It's a light run around and shoot your friends kind of game that plays in like 10 to 20 minutes, and that is our next game.
That's very different than what you would normally do.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we like all games. We started out in history games. One, we love history, and so we got to mix those two loves, but we also love games in general. And we got into history because, like I said, it was a niche that nobody else was really doing in a modern way. But so we were really trying to diversify in some non-historical games. And that's why we did the Ages of Mayhem. And then the Kickstarter after Battle Royale is our Stellaris Legacy Kickstarter.
Legacy?
Which is, it is a whole new brand of Legacy, which we're calling Infinite Legacy. So they have continuation of play like a Legacy game, but it's completely replayable. It has no linear storyline and no permanent destructive changes to the game, so it's completely resettable.
All right, I'm intrigued.
So it has a Legacy feel because it's a 4X game that you can keep playing the same 4X empire from game to game to game. So I love 4X games, but when the game's over, my empire's over. And I want to keep playing this cool empire built up. And in Stellaris Legacy, you'll be able to do that as far as you want. Or start a new empire at any time you want. And so, that's based off the very popular video game Stellaris.
Okay, someone's asking a quick detail about it. They want to know is it using strategy to win or is it using luck to win?
Which one? The Battle Royale?
Let's go with the Battle Royale one. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, so the Battle Royale is you have a team of characters that you're dropping on the table from the sky, and you flick the cards to move them. And you start out with no weapons. You have to move around to collect weapons and collect resources to build walls and stuff. So the strategy of the game is you do have to have some physical ability, but it's about positioning, getting yourself in a position where your weapon has advantage. So you might have a long-range weapon that you need to stay farther away, or a close-range weapon that you need to be close. And there's obstacles on the board that maybe you're outnumbered, so you need to get this guy from behind cover that they can't, because attacks are done by like rolling discs or flicking cubes off of your cards, and they have to roll over or land on another card. And so it's a lot about your accuracy of flicking. So it's not really luck. There, of course, is a little bit of luck because it's a light 10 to 20-minute game. But it's really about your skill of your choices of where you're trying to flick, and if you can actually have that kind of accuracy. Which after like 2 games, usually people do.
Yeah, dexterity games, you kind of like eventually get a feel for what you're supposed to be doing, and then you're just it's motor movements.
We expect the first game to go terribly.
They usually do. I'm not very good at dexterities.
Yep.
There was one last question. They want to know how long it takes Academy Games on average to go from a concept of a game to getting it to Kickstarter. Do you have an average of how long it takes?
Yeah, we usually spend anywhere from... And time has a beautiful effect on design. Because I don't like to rush design. I'll let a design sit for 6 months sometimes, even though I think it's done, because the passage of time will give me a new perspective that'll let me see the design in a way that I couldn't have 6 months ago. So almost in all my designs, I give a 6 month break after I think it's done, and usually there's at least another 6 months of development after that break, because I have a new perspective that makes the game better.
That is a long time.
But it is. I mean, and it is one reason our games tend to be very good, is because we don't rush them, because we have a huge backlog. We don't need to rush a design. I literally have 20 games that I'm ready to put on Kickstarter.
Wow.
I can't put them all at once. So I choose whatever game I feel like is the most ready. And that gives us time to keep trying, because even if we think the game is perfect, we still try to make it better. And usually we found a way to make it better. And that means that we have a game in the end that is not going to be just a Kickstarter, a month in distribution, and then it's over. Our games tend to be still in the market and selling. We repeat them every year, 10 years on. So yeah, our Conflict of Heroes, Wake the Bear, very first game, we just had to print a whole nother print run.
That's awesome.
We reprint that game every 6 months. Same with 1775 and Vikings. Every 6 months we do another print run of anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 copies.
That's excellent.
So but it's because, one, we focus on quality above everything else. We always want to do, like, if it takes an extra 6 months to get the game out, and people are mad because we promised it 6 months earlier, but I know it'll make it a better game in the end, I'll always choose to do that over rushing the game out, because they'll be happy in the end with the product they get. And it's better to rush it and give them a product that they are maybe is not as good as it could be, because odds are they'll probably be able to notice.
Someone asked, this will probably be the last question since I'm going to let you go, if Vikings is currently available. Yeah,
it is. Yep. It's usually should be available through your local game store, but you can also go to academygames.com to get the game. Yep.
Well, those were all the questions I had. Did you have any last minute tricks or tips that you wanted? I think we touched on a bunch of stuff. I wasn't sure if there's anything that we didn't touch on you wanted to bring up before I let you go.
Like I said, it's Kickstarter and crowdfunding is all about risk mitigation, not necessarily getting risk. If you're starting out, you have to know that you're not going to make money for the first few years. And so you have to plan accordingly for that. And if you do that, you should be able to build the company to a point where it is actually sustainable and you can make money off of it. And that's why I said most people that are successful start out as a hobby, where they're doing it part-time from their other job. And because I see so many people end up losing money, their personal savings, because of they overextend them, and that's where finance and budgeting play a huge role. But yeah,
I know,
whole other
right?
discussion.
That's going to be like a whole nother show just about financing. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Sorry that we went a little longer than usual, but I think we got a lot of cool stuff that we discussed out there, and I think that I at least learned a lot. It was interesting, especially to learn about like the comments and how just like the way that Kickstarter metrics works. What you've noticed.
Yeah, and I want to say this last thing about the industry. It's that this has the board game industry is the friendliest competitive industry I've ever been in. And I think it's partly because of board games is all about friendly competition. There's a mentality of people like board games are competitive, but they also are friendly about it. And so don't be afraid to ask. Most people I know, when we were starting out, we found the established players were so open and willing to give us advice and even help us out. And that's the thing. And I, like I said, I like to pass that on because the people who really were open, remember that. And so, one, don't be afraid to ask people questions, and because usually they'll be willing to offer you some really good advice. And two, when you have something to offer, I encourage you to offer help to the people just entering the industry, because there's a lot to learn, and I really think there's enough room for
and like
everybody.
You said,
in this room,
you remember the people that help you, and then you end up helping them too. Yep. So it's all friendly.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, good people are the ones that they're the ones that succeed the most at the end. The people that are cutthroat and out for themselves, they tend to be very short-lived flames.
Yeah.
And that's why the board game industry, I found, just overall is a very good industry in terms of the character.
I would agree. Yeah, I've noticed that. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you go. It's kind of getting kind of late for it. Yeah. Sorry. But I really appreciate you coming on this show. And I think that we talked about a whole bunch of great stuff. So thank you so much for being on the show, Gunter. And just for anybody that's curious about next week's episode, it's going to actually be kind of late. It's going to be at 10:30 Eastern time, because I'm going to be having a guest who lives on the West Coast on the show. It's Ido Baraf from Pencil First Games. He'll be on the show talking to me about similar stuff, how you market, how you get your crowd to come to your Kickstarter and all that jazz. So that's it for today's show. Gunter, thank you for being on the show. And I guess if anyone has questions, you know who to ask. He said he's willing to help. All right, that's it for Crowd Chat. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'll see you next time.